I will start off and offer some comments from the Institute, and I will hand the microphone over to Deborah DeMont, who will hand it over to Louise Aguilar, who will then return it to me. I will have a statement that I will read from Tamar Frankel, since she could not be with us today, and then I will close the program. So I'm speaking on behalf of the Institute and the Selection Committee, and want to just spend a couple minutes to highlight what we went through to identify this year's honoree. As some of you may know, this is our 10th year with the award. In fact, we've just come out with a new piece on the Institute that highlights the prior honorees. We started 10 years ago with Robert A.G. Monks, and he was followed. I won't read the whole list. He was followed by the current SEC chair. Actually, and then following, we had Phyllis Borsey, and then following Phyllis, we have the current senior counsel to the SEC chair, Barb Roper, and then including with the others, we have Ron Rhodes, who I think is still with us, or maybe he's gone to class. I know he wouldn't miss a class, and then finally last year's honoree, Louise Aguilar. So we believe we have a list of true luminaries, and so every year it seems to be, in a sense, more difficult to determine where we should go from here. But it soon became quite clear to the selection committee that this was not difficult at all, and given the academic record, given the scholarship, given the focus in the scholarship of Professor Laby on the issues of broker-dealer investment advisor regulation, of specifically advice and specifically fiduciary. There are a lot of scholars out there that we, as we know. I'll say, just from my perspective, a couple of things that distinguishes Arthur's work is the degree, and I know that sometimes he doesn't like me to say this, but it's the degree to which his work is accessible to a lawyer. It's accessible to a practitioner in terms of how he writes and what he writes. And I think that's important. We like to try at the Institute to be representing what we call real fiduciary advisors and investors. And so that is our perspective, far more than the perspective of a regulator, in a sense. Nothing taken there, Phyllis, or an attorney. So as we looked at again at Arthur's work, those aspects came out, and then finally and talk about simple. I mean, some people are going to think this is too simple, but you know, I was looking at different CVs of different law professors, and I looked again at Arthur's CV, and I also looked at Tamar Frankel's CV, and I did a word search on his CVs for the word advisor, OR, or advisor, ER, and then I did it again for Tamar, and well, anybody hazard a guess as to what I found? Just throw something out there if you have a guess. Nobody's going to guess this, but I'll give you 10 seconds to think if you want to think you can. But on both their CVs, the total number of mentions of those two words are exactly the same, precisely. Unless they've changed them in the last 24 hours on each CV, you'll find 28 mentions of advisor and advisor on each of their CVs. So for me, that was that was the deal maker right there. That they seem to have that parallel interest And I obviously I say that tongue in cheek because they've been colleagues for many, many years and have been co-authors as also being colleagues. So I'll pause there and now hand it over to Deborah, who will hand it over to Louise in terms of giving their perspective as a legal scholar and an attorney and former regulator. Deborah?
Thank you, Knut. It's a great pleasure to speak about Arthur and to extend congratulations on his well-deserved Frankel Fiduciary Prize. I'll focus on his outstanding contributions as a scholar, and unsurprisingly, my perspective is that of an academic. So I'll begin by saying that over the last 10 years or so, it's been very gratifying to work with Arthur as a collaborator. We've been co-authors. He's edited my work, commented on draft manuscripts, and regardless of the specific task or project, I would say that Arthur is always reliable. Arthur takes deadlines very seriously, which many academics don't, treat them as sort of precatory or suggestions, but not Arthur. And Arthur, of course, is always helpful and resourceful and constructive. Now, looking at Arthur's scholarship as a whole, I would say my assessment is that it has 4 characteristics that to me are very striking. First of all, there was quite a lot of it. And this is a good thing because it's all worthwhile. There are no repeats or retreads. Arthur has a lot to say, always very well thought through, and he finds it sufficient to say what he has to say on any particular topic or any particular inquiry once. He might refer back to it, but he has a capacity, which is an excellent thing for a scholar, to be able to think of new additional things to do, additional things to say. Second, Arthur's work is so careful and so meticulous. I came to realize this most fully in his excellent law review article that revisits the conventional wisdom about the judicial construction of the Advisors Act. This is a very carefully done work, I would say, of legal history. Arthur is always willing to revisit, again, as I said, conventional wisdom. He's always willing to dig deeper and continue digging deeper until he's satisfied. Third, Arthur's work manifests, I would say, both commitment to what he's doing as a scholar and a larger vision. His work is, I think, unified in a lot of ways by a deep appreciation of the importance of the fiduciary dimension of investment advising as a field and its coherence overall as a scholarly field, obviously in addition to a field in legal practice. And fourth, Arthur is persistent. Okay, Arthur's most recent major publication, his very fine article, Advisors as Fiduciaries, went through many iterations. I've heard Arthur present it at more than one scholarly workshop. You might say it has been not just road tested, but challenged, by aggressive academics. who kind of have their own deep sense of commitment. But the culmination of the project, as Arthur persisted with it over the years, is a very sophisticated work of scholarship that I would say firmly situates advising within the kinds of activities that can trigger fiduciary obligations. Arthur, of course, has very carefully looked into arguments contrary, widespread academic skepticism, and he has persisted, right, towards what I think would have to be regarded as a very major foundational contribution to the field. So congratulations, Arthur, and I wish that my teaching schedule were not as it is and I could have joined in person. Thank you. And over to Luis.
Thank you, Deborah. I have to say, it's quite an honor for me to be here and join such a stellar cast to recognize and congratulate Arthur on receiving the prestigious Frankel Fiduciary Prize. I'll point out, since you guys are busy in that panel, I may not be checking your emails, but tomorrow Professor Frankel actually sent an email saying she was trying to get in, I guess, but Zoom would not let her. So she sends her apologies for not being able to join us, but she did make a strong effort. You'll see your emails. You're all are all copied on it. And I'll say that even though I was familiar with Professor Laby's work for many years before I became an SEC commissioner, I definitely became intimately familiar with his writings and research during my time as a commissioner. Alongside the works of luminaries like Professors Frankel, Ron Rhodes, and John Coffey and others, Arthur's discussions of the fiduciary standard and many other securities-related issues became required reading for me and my staff. His writings were some of the most informative discussions and explanations available. The clarity, thoroughness, and common sense that flowed through and from his writings were priceless. While Canute rightly pointed out all of Arthur's writings about the fiduciary and how they stand out, Arthur has eloquently addressed a number of other issues that this group may not be familiar with, as we at the SEC became familiar with, from discussions about the competition among stock markets and exchanges for listings and the pros and cons of that competition, to the extraterritorial application of U.S. securities laws, to ways of detecting insider trading, and just to name a few of the issues that he so ably tackled. Those became required readings. They informed many of the rulemakings and discussions going on at the SEC during my time. But in particular, Arthur's consistent and clear voice on the benefits of fiduciary duty make him truly a worthy recipient of the Frankel Fiduciary Prize. I think it's particularly fitting that Arthur receives this prize because of his close collaboration and partnership with Professor Frankel in revising the regulation of money managers, mutual funds, and advisors, the 4 incredibly well-researched and well-written volumes that many of us practitioners consider the most influential work in the area and the first place to go when you're dealing with tough issues involving money managers. As many of you know, I was general counsel for a global asset manager for many years, and I must say I made a lot of money from reading those volumes and providing providing informed opinions that arose from what Tamar had done at the time and what Arthur so ably has picked up more recently. The combination of Tamar and Arthur is as powerful as they come. And your work, Arthur, is to be cherished. It will live long past us. It will be cited by scholars and experts generations to come. And you should be very, very proud of that. I just want to thank Canute and the Institute for giving me an opportunity to be here and to share my voice in honoring Arthur and recognizing his valuable contributions over the years and the years to come. I'll end my remarks by really saying congratulations, Arthur, on a well-earned and well-deserved award. Now back to you, Canute.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you, Deborah. Your comments were great. I'm sorry to hear, you're right, Louise, I haven't looked at my email in the last hour, so I have not seen what Tamar's, what her experience has been. But yesterday, we can confirm that I would read her statement for her, so I have it here. And thank you for saying again, reminding us that that Arthur and Tamar have been colleagues and co-authors in that very unique resource which they've developed. So, from Tamar Frankel, quote: "From birth to death, humans depend on each other. The dependence varies with age, abilities, relationships, balance of knowledge and power, and their interpretation and the rules of law and culture, and sometimes with a human groups and history. As human societies become more varied and complex, the balance of power within societies may change. This is a continuous need to follow these changes, understand the drive, causes, issues, and needs. Professor Arthur Laby has unearthed and enriched our knowledge of relationships and our reliance on each other, and a guide for our future dealings with each other. His work will serve to guide us for generations to come. These are difficult times for many people, and they may be driven to resort to dishonest and unreliable use of the power they might possess. Professor Laby's work is very timely in leading not only this country, but other countries as well, in balancing, maintaining, and creating both law and culture's fair relationships among their people. Thank you, Professor Laby, for your important contribution to this important social need." Unquote. I don't know that anything else can be added except that if one knows Professor Frankel at 97 years young and has had a dialogue with her, one can imagine her passionate delivery of these remarks that certainly come through these words. So, Arthur, that's I think a very special message. So with that, this program is done, and I just want 1 minute to.
I have a few.
Excuse me. I was testing to see whether you were paying attention, Arthur.
Don't you worry.
And Arthur was paying attention. See, he was paying attention. So before I have my last minute about Fiduciary September, Arthur has a couple comments.
You bet I do.
One out
Sure
of two.
can.
Fantastic. So first of all, I just want to thank Knut and Deborah and Luis for those amazing words. Knut, you're a force of nature in this field. Those words from you mean a lot to me. Deborah, one of the great pleasures of my career has been working with you, co-authoring with you, sharing comments, and getting to know you. It's just really been wonderful. I'm sorry you're not here today, but I look forward to many more years of collaboration with you. And Luis, although we don't know each other well, it's a real honor for me to know that you find my work helpful and useful. That really means a lot to me, and I do hope that we get to know each other much more in years to come. So I will keep you all for another 5 or 6 minutes with some remarks. Of course, I will have something to say about Tamar, which is why I didn't include her in the list with Knut and Deborah and Luis, because I have something to say about Tamar in just a second. Well, when Knut emailed me and said, "Hey, I have to talk to you for 5 minutes," my first reaction was, "Oh no," as all of us might react when Knut first calls us, because I assumed it was about something that would require work, right? A call from Knut usually means work of some sort. When he got me on the phone and told me about the Frankel Prize, my next reaction was, "You must have the wrong Arthur Laby. It must be my long lost twin whose parents gave the same name or something like that. It just couldn't be me." When I finally realized he wasn't kidding, I was and am truly humbled and honored to be included among these giants in the field. I mean, it's really amazing. So I want to thank the members of the selection committee, Michael Koffler. Michael, I'm sorry we're not together this evening, but I hope to see you soon. Rob Sitkoff, Clark Blackman, and of course, Knut Rostad. I'm really thrilled and delighted and flattered. Of course, the greatest honor here is to receive a prize that bears the name of Tamar Frankel. And so I have a few things to say about Tamar, and I know she was trying to jump on, but presumably she will watch the videotape. And so these words are directed towards her. As most of you know, on a personal level, Tamar is lovely and funny and warm and a pleasure to be around. When she first contacted me back in 2013 and asked me to join her excellent treatise, I was thrilled. Of course, I did have some reservations about the time it would take. There's no question about that. But I knew immediately that the opportunity to work alongside Tamar would really be extraordinary, and it has been truly extraordinary. On a personal level, people often talk about how Tamar invented the field of fiduciary law, and I completely agree with that. But just a little history here, because I can't resist. Tamar was not the first person to write about fiduciary duties. The law professors in the room might know about a 1932 treatise, a volume entitled A Treatise on the History and Law of Fiduciary Relationship and Resulting Trusts. Now, Tamar has been around for a while, and she was clearly a prodigy, but even Tamar was not writing books and law review articles on fiduciary duties as a mere child of 5 or thereabouts. So she was not the first to write about fiduciary law. Although Tamar was not the first, she absolutely did break new ground by focusing on fiduciary law as a dedicated field. In a 1983 article, Tamar said explicitly that we usually study fiduciaries in the context of their substantive areas of law, corporate directors, trustees, guardians, lawyers, and so on. Tamar said we could do that, right? We could continue to go down that road, but she argued instead for recognizing fiduciaries as a group and viewing the law that governs them as a distinct body of policies and rules. And she gave 2 reasons for doing that, which I just want to reflect on for 1 minute. The first was that fiduciary law was becoming more important as it responded to social change. The second was that only using analogies from one type of fiduciary to another was too wooden and might not result in optimal rules. That was 40 years ago, nearly 40 years ago. How prescient was that? Today, there is indeed a field of fiduciary law that Tamar launched in that article. A number of scholars in the US, Canada, Australia, England have staked their entire careers on writing about the fiduciary relationship. There are conferences, books, edited volumes, you name it. I'm responsible for some of those that focus on how fiduciary law has developed over the past 40 years. Indeed, I've learned so much from the writings, not only of Tamar, but from so many others, Deborah DeMott, Rob Sitkoff, John Langbein, and countless others, some of whom are in this virtual room and who write so compellingly about the field. So Tamar, if you are listening to this after today's meeting, we are all indebted to you. And although I thank the committee members for this year's award, on a deeper level, we all should be thanking Tamar for her farsightedness and her wisdom. Lastly, I just quickly want to acknowledge the work of the Institute. The Institute is now over 10 years old. It's growing up. And it has performed a remarkable service by focusing on the importance of the fiduciary standard in financial advice. The founders recognized that there was no single organization dedicated to helping investors through promoting the fiduciary standard, and it's really played a key role in raising the level of education and advocacy and in serving investors, policymakers, academics, and the industry on this topic. So we should all be grateful for the founders' vision for the Institute and how they have implemented that vision. So thanks to the Institute for making this all possible. Thanks again to the committee for this amazing prize, and of course to all of you for being here this evening.
Before you go, Arthur, I want the, I don't know whether this can come through or not, but there is something that Arthur has to take home with him, gets to take home with him, to help him remember what we have done today and what we believe how Arthur has contributed to the life of Fiduciary. So, congratulations, Arthur.
Thank you.
Well deserved.
So now I am down to my last minute, but it's the last minute that reflects on what's happened over the last 3 weeks and what we have done that I think is new and exciting and is important for our going forward. As I said, we've had now 10 separate panels, over 30 speakers representing a variety of interests, a variety of slices of the issues that involve fiduciary. Two of the most interesting to me was earlier this week, we had a panel of millennials talking about the future of financial planning. So just for 1 hour to hear 20 and 30 somethings talk about what they see and the future that they are looking at, to me was fantastic. Earlier in the month, we had 2 young financial advisors put on a program for students at financial planning programs about how to start their career, how to get into the field, and why it's so important to do so as a fiduciary. So that's just a couple, and I shouldn't do that because we know anybody that has children know they have no favorite children, but there's some that sort of stand out in some places at the same time. So on that note, I will say thank you for those who came and joined us today. I don't think there could have been a better way to bring this year's program to a close. So it just is a fantastic way to pull the curtain down for a short while. Before one of the reporters left, he said, "Well, what are you doing next week?" So I said, "Well, actually, I'm going to a conference to learn something new." So anyway, we will be doing more things, of course, but it won't be next week. But anyway, thank you very much, especially Louise, Deborah, for joining, Michael, for your support and allowing us to use your space, and James, I'm sorry we didn't get to meet. But we'll look forward to staying in contact going forward. So on that, it's before midnight, Louise, so you won't get into too much trouble, I hope. So anyway.
Great program. I would stay to midnight if you needed me to.
Thank you, folks.
Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.